So there's an interesting story out just yesterday, kind of as I was going to bed. Reported on Rugby Pass, and it's come from Rugby 365. I'll put the link in the description. The Saru president, Mark Alexander, at the launch of the Pro 14, just gave an interview about the future of kind of South African rugby, where things are going. And it kind of touches on the Pro 14 going forward and also for Super Rugby. So the first thing that was kind of interesting was basically the comment that there's negotiations on to get two teams from South Africa, two new teams, more teams, into the pro competition. So perhaps that would make it a Pro 16. From what he said 2020, but probably 2019-20, so that's not too far away, the 2019-2020 season. When quizzed about which two teams, because I mean, I did a video a while back about South Africa looking to get out of Super Rugby when there were some rumours about it, and there was talk about which of the kind of existing Super Rugby South African teams would be looking to get out. But from what he alluded to, it's none of these teams. None of the existing Super Rugby teams. He all but said it would be the Griquas and the Pumas. I admit I don't know a whole lot about those teams. I just know they play Currie Cup, and read the news to see what scores and everything. But I don't know what kind of fans attend their game, like how much they get in attendance, whether they're traditional rugby playing areas, how many of them contribute to the Springboks, that kind of thing. I'm pretty ignorant in those terms, but just Currie Cup is kind of when I know that. So, yeah, none of the existing franchises would go. It would be the Griquas and the Pumas to join the pro competition. Yeah, which is kind of a big news. I mean, I guess South Africa is a big country, so supporting more teams doesn't seem like that much of a stretch. They got the population to do it. They got that many players playing abroad that you'd think if they can retain more players playing domestically, then sure, there's enough players to be competitive. He was asked, how do you see it like in terms of the competition getting too big? Because one of the things that is kind of known about one of Super Rugby's main failures is getting too big and people losing interest. We had 18 teams. Attendances were down, viewership was down, and Super Rugby still hasn't really recovered from that. It's still not where it was before that kind of 18-team expansion. And Mark Alexander basically said, that was mostly down to, travel and things like that. But I'm not sure he's 100% right on that. For me, at least in New Zealand, the competition wasn't competitive enough, I think was one of the main reasons. There were too many games where you knew one team's going to win by 50 points. That just put fans off, because if there's a lot of things for other sports, like if you look at rugby league, which is one of the other popular sports here in New Zealand, the bottom teams beat the top teams pretty regularly. Not all the time, but it's not uncommon. Whereas, like the Sunwolves beating the Crusaders, and when it was Super 18, this is not going to happen. And it's not just the Sunwolves I'm talking about. There were a lot of poor teams in that final year of Super 18. So yeah, in terms of increasing competitiveness, he kind of addressed that by saying that they're looking at a draft. Much like the American sports do drafts to, kind of keep the balance, keep the parity in teams. The teams who finish bottom get to pick the best emerging young talent. He didn't give any details that I read, but some kind of draft to create a more even distribution of talent. He basically said that some teams might have 6 good locks at the moment, whereas other teams, like he kept mentioning the Kings, Southern Kings. It's really bucketing down outside. Southern Kings can't get any. So that's one way of kind of distributing the talent evenly enough that you get competitive games. And I think that is important. Whether that works or not, I don't know, very early days, but I guess at least he's kind of addressing that. And especially seeing as there's no players from the Kings or the Cheetahs in the Springboks at the minute, you'd think there's got to be some incentive for guys to join those teams if they're looking at kind of higher aspirations. So if they are going to, put more teams in, there needs to be a shot for them to kind of achieve at the international level as well. So yeah, 2 teams to the Pro 14, making it a Pro 16 if the negotiations go ahead, and introducing a draft. All pretty interesting. They mentioned about the fees that they kind of had to pay to get the Cheetahs and the Kings in, and putting the South African Rugby Union in a bit of a deficit. He's basically saying it's a long-term investment, so they figure this is going to pay off in the end, because basically a lot of the money is in the Northern Hemisphere. We all know that, and it also touches on the future of where Super Rugby is at, because he said in a pretty casual way, I didn't get it word for word, but basically if they don't want to play in the south anymore, they can just move to the north, and he's talking about these teams. So that's kind of, despite all the denials that South Africa are heading north, it seems to be another indication that the eyes are definitely that way, and that's kind of where the future may lie for some of these teams, which then affects the rest of the guys, Aussie, New Zealand, Sunwolves and Jaguares, for what happens to the competition if that happens. So it's definitely one to watch. I'm not sure what's going to happen, obviously. It sounds like there's going to be 2 more, someone's driving up my driveway, 2 more teams coming forward. We'll see what the quality is like. I note from the first round of Pro 14, the 2 South African teams, the Cheetahs and the Kings, the Cheetahs got kind of thrashed 38-0 by Munster. Munster obviously a good team, but 38-0 is pretty embarrassing. And the Kings lost 34-16 to one of the Italian teams. Both the Italian teams had wins, but I've never followed the Pro 14 in any huge detail, but from memory the Italian teams always finish kind of near the bottom. Stand to be corrected on that, but pretty comfortably beaten 34-16. So yeah, it's still not clear that there's that even distribution of talent, but perhaps just not at the minute. If we look at some other sports where the leagues get pretty big, the Premiership and the Top 14, 2 of the other kind of top rugby comps, have 12 and 14 teams. Seems to be a kind of sustainable number for rugby, but other sports, most of the main football leagues around the world, like the Premier League, La Liga, got around 20 teams. American sports tend to have around 30, so the NBA's got 30, the NHL's got 31, and the NFL's got 32. They tend to divide things kind of east and west to reduce some of the travel. So that'll be an interesting one for the Pro 14 if it does keep getting a bit bloated. There's already the conference system there now, so it does get more difficult the more teams you get in, but we'll see if that is the way it's going to go, how well that is supported. But yeah, it's still pretty early news out at the minute, so the details are still to come through. There's still negotiations and whatnot, nothing's confirmed, but like I said, I'll link the article. You guys have a look, watch the interview. It's about 13 minutes long. He says a few interesting things, but do let me know what you guys think is the kind of long-term future for these South African teams. Do you see them sticking around in South Africa? In Super Rugby? Because he said basically that he's happy that South Africa is in a unique position to have 4 teams in the north and 4 teams in the south. They can kind of get the best of both worlds. It's the best thing for South African rugby. But then in the next sentence it's like, oh yeah, and if we don't want to stay in the south, we'll just go north. So let me know where you think things are going to go, how you think the competitiveness will be for the South African teams if they are, 8 teams playing in these kind of top divisions. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, and we'll watch this one closely. I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.